Good evening, everyone. I'm Helen Farrell from the Florentine, and this is going to be a very interesting Friday evening discussion. Joining us, we have some of Florence's most experienced tour guides. So we have with us Alexandra Lawrence, we have Paola Vojnovic, and we have Elaine Ruffalo. So hello, ladies. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you.
Happy to be here.
Me too.
I thought we'd start off with, there's a lot of curiosity because people are seeing that Florence is reopening. You know, I today went and wandered around the Bubbly Gardens and it was extraordinary. I'm still in a bit of a trance. You know that the cathedral opened its doors as well for the first time. So maybe, Alex, if you could talk us about what the actual situation is here in Florence right now in terms of tourism.
Absolutely. In terms of tourism, not a whole lot. The city is still closed to everyone except Florentine residents and residents of Tuscany. So now we can move around. So maybe we have some regional tourists. But Helen, as you said, the museums are starting to open. The gardens opening up, I think, just really gives such a beautiful sign that Florence is ready. We are excited to be able to be back. The Uffizi should open towards the end of the month. The Museum of the Opera del Duomo and the Opera del Duomo have put out some dates and in fact have offered several free dates for anyone who's in town for all of their monuments. And so I think really encouraging people to feed and nourish their souls with art, with culture, with the amazing works of art that the city really has to offer. The borders will open up, as we understand it, starting at the beginning of June to the European Union. We're not quite sure when people outside of the European Union will be allowed back in. And the hope, of course, would be that as things do start to open in terms of borders, the museums will do the same. But for now, tourism, we're at a bit of a standstill in terms of actually being out in the spaces. Although a lot of us, all of us who are here have really taken advantage of a lot of these online opportunities. And so I think that one of my colleagues and friends will speak about that.
No, I mean, it's true. I mean, you're seeing, I realize that, you know, all of you around the world, Florence lovers, are seeing that we're, you know, lockdown has drawn to a close and that we're learning to live with this virus. You know, we're going out with our face protection on, and I think Elaine has an example she'll show us later of that. But, you know, and we're keeping our distance and everything, but it is very much something that we're learning to live alongside. We're experiencing the city, but you know, that's the future. We'll see where tourism goes next. As Alex was saying, Paola, perhaps you could talk us through about the opportunities that have strangely sort of come out in this time with online tourism experiences. This is something all three of you are offering. But Paola, maybe you could introduce us to these new platforms a little bit and what you're talking about on them.
Of course, it's such a pleasure to be here in your company, ladies. Lovely to see you, everyone. You know, I attended for the International Museum Day on Monday. I attended a conference actually at the Nehru Science Museum in Mumbai, India. And they had this global group of museum professionals speaking about what this means for the future, really, of tourism and museums. And I think kind of the overall theme was the amazing opportunities that have opened up with this, you know, unfortunate pandemic that came on. And one of the speakers, Gail Lord, who is one of the leaders in the cultural management, she actually said that many of the problematics we actually attribute to COVID today actually started much before. So the poverty, the immigration, the communication, the mass tourism, all of this was something that you know, happened before. But I think now with this virus, we have to look at the things, to look at solutions very quickly. So it's kind of now it's in our minds. So what do we do, which, you know, when tourism comes back, and how do we want to maybe change our future? We have this amazing opportunity today. So even though museums are closed, we have never had so much access to museums like today. Mm-hmm. You know, I think in the past, you would never have a curator come in with a drink in their hand and tell you about a work of art. in the museum. And we get to see that today. All the museums are doing it. So I think this extraordinary opportunity that I think will started now, but I hope will continue in the future.
No, I mean, it's true, isn't it? We've seen this incredible sort of outpouring of technology from the Uffizi with its virtual exhibitions. Palazzo Strozzi, who's had artists tuning in with messages from all over the world. We're sort of seeing this togetherness of culture, which is really quite fascinating. I mean, Paola, you're talking about the problems that existed. I'm sure many people who were tuning in, and we all agree that it had become unsustainable. You know, Florence had become too popular for its own good, too avid in many ways, too greedy. So, I mean, how do you feel the dream? What would Florence be like in an ideal, if we hit that reset button? How would we want it to be? I mean, that's something maybe, Elaine, if you want to tackle that sort of idealistic question for a second.
Yeah, it's a great question. Thank you again for inviting me. The way we move through the city has got to change. I mean, I've been living and teaching in Florence for almost 30 years, teaching art history at Syracuse University, doing private tours, small groups, museum groups, expat art history classes. And I would say in the last 10 years, really Florence has exploded, of course, with tourism, and the city's been eviscerated from its reality. Artisans, bakeries, butchers, candlestick makers, everything has become for the mass tourism. And as you said, it's a moment that we can reset. So we've got this, I'm trying to be optimistic, this golden moment to try to make tourism maybe what it once was, but even better. And I think the way we move people through the city has to change. Maybe the classic Piazza Uffizi Academia with a huge group following a tour guide holding a flag is not going to work with a megaphone. We have to slow down. And I think the teachers, the guides, we've got to think out of the box and think about new itineraries that are fascinating, but begin in the open piazzas and then move to churches. And then let's go to the lesser known museums, Casa Buonarroti, San Marco, which is never full with people, and organize ourselves in terms of itineraries that make sense. And do a lot of explaining outside in the fresh air. I mean, that's a dream really come true, not to have to be fighting the crowded streets with large groups.
Maybe Alex, maybe you'd like to take over that question. I mean, this is an interesting time as well. I mean, the director of the Uffizi, for example, mentioned this idea of maybe lots of little Uffizis. I don't know. Maybe if you want to carry on this idea, Alex, and what your thoughts on the subject too.
Absolutely. I mean, first of all, I would echo both what Paola was saying about these incredible opportunities that we have during this moment to be able to explore. I know I've taken some of my work online, and for example, tomorrow I'm doing something on really special manuscripts inside of the Laurentian Library that normally we wouldn't be able to have access to, but in a certain sense, we'll have access to them tomorrow through being able to tell these stories, and you don't feel like you have to rush around and only see those principal things, only the cathedral and the Uffizi and all of this. So I think this moment, exactly what Paola was saying, is allowing us to be able to connect with one another and explore options and different things. Exactly what Elaine is saying, which is we've got to reevaluate the way that the city is visited, the way that we work. I mean, it's our responsibility, I feel like, as professionals in this industry, in the tourism sector, to be able to craft those types of itineraries. We all, I know I speak for my two friends and colleagues here, we're insatiably curious. So we love to invent and study and create new itineraries. And we would love to have the opportunity to go into, and all of us I know do this in our own businesses, trying to create space in other museums, other churches. I think now it's dire. I mean, it's gotten to the point, I mentioned this in the article very small thoughts that I had in the beautiful issue of the Florentine, that I feel like we have an extraordinary opportunity to do exactly what Elaine said, which is to start fresh, to start thinking about how we can provide these glimpses into the city and into its history and into the masterpieces that are not just in those top 3 places or spaces. And I agree, being outside, I mean, my gosh, and maybe it's the 2.5 months of confinement, but being out in the piazza, understanding that this is a city that truly, at every turn and every eyeful, you've got myriad stories and beauty that we need to be the ones to be able to bring that to them. So yes, collaboration, creativity, and an understanding of the responsibility, I think, that we have to. It's an incredible opportunity. I'm excited actually about it.
It's kind of strange, isn't it? There's this sort of like weird, we're aware this is an incredibly dire situation for people's livelihoods.
Absolutely.
All 3 of you immediately impacted, obviously, by the situation, but there is this feeling of excitement, of starting over. The mayor of Florence is calling it the new Renaissance. I'm not sure whether that's a little bit too ambitious right now, but out of great crisis does come incredible creativity. So this is an opportunity. We're getting people writing in, and we've got somebody here who says, I think it's important to rethink itineraries. So she's agreeing with you all and move towards a more authentic experience. Maybe, Paola, if you'd like to continue the thoughts on authenticity in future tourism.
Well, for now, my opinion is that the tourists will come back. We will have large groups in Italy again, in a matter of time. I think right now what our possibility and opportunity is to actually, is for museums to think about local visitors, museums to think about Italians coming in and inviting them in, because one big thing with the global, mass tourism was that we got so lazy, because the museums knew as long as they opened their doors, the tickets will be sold, people will be coming in. So this now is an opportunity to start talking about locals. How do you invite people in? How do you open your doors again? And also to retrain the museum staff. Because I believe that the future of the museums will be really, I think the online project and online visibility will just continue to grow from here on. So I feel we will have about 50% of the visitors coming in online, and then 50% of people, just actually visiting the actual museums. So I believe we have this short window of time to make things a little bit different, but I believe that the tourism will never stop, and Florence will never stop being, what it was from the Grand Tour onwards.
Sheila actually writes in here, what are your thoughts about continuing with virtual online visits around Florence after this pandemic is over? I don't know if, Elaine, you'd like to tackle that.
Sure.
I mean, Paola has touched on it, but yeah.
Yeah, when the shutdown occurred, I have to say I was pretty glum, and because besides my daughter, really my work defines me and what I love to do. I love to be out in Florence teaching on the streets and piazzas and museums. I had this terrible sinking feeling that, I wasn't going to be able to do that until maybe next year. And then actually it was from watching my friend Linda Campani do a film class that it occurred to me, well, I can do this online. I can be online. And I very quickly put together a presentation on, I think it must have been Caravaggio or something, I can't remember. And I honestly thought I was going to have about 30 people. And last Sunday I had 610 people on the last presentation I gave. And that, of course, made me feel so happy, so optimistic, because it tells you that this art, Florence and Italy, fills people's souls, just like it does mine. And I was thinking about it all day, getting ready for this interview, and I realized that the popularity of this and the convenience of this, we could segue in the future when things do open up. And Paola's right, tourism will come back. But perhaps we can use that platform of virtual art history encounters to prepare people. Maybe we could get technologically savvy and download short podcasts, so we're not all going in the Uffizi, but perhaps a podcast on certain works of art. I mean, I think with this virtual idea, suddenly things have opened up and we're going to be able to do some pretty interesting things.
No, it's fascinating. There's a lot of agreement here from people saying about, David says online allows in-depth history, comparisons with works by the same artist elsewhere, lower fatigue. I'm not so sure, you know, for you who are preparing it, I'm aware it is a job in itself, but many possibilities for enrichment and a bigger view of what the art and architecture is. I don't know if you agree with that, maybe Alex, you'd like to build on that idea at all.
Yeah, absolutely. All of that. I mean, the feedback that I've gotten has been primarily that it's so nice to actually sit with, and I'm doing something that's a little bit different in that it's not totally art history focused because of my own interests and my academic background. But that notion of being able to really be with these ideas, whether they're works of art or whether they're talking about different cities or whatever it might be that appeals to them about Italian culture. I think that that medium really has been, I agree with Elaine, where, you know, you think this is how hungry they are for Italy, for also, I mean, you know, all three of us have been involved in international education for, in some cases, decades, at least Elaine and I for sure, decades. And it's so wonderful because we're used to 20-year-old students who are mildly interested in what we're saying. And then you've got these students that aren't of traditional age who are eating it up and who love the notion that you would be brought through almost a course. And I know, of course, Paola is doing just that. And so people, I think this has been such a great surprise, really, for us all to be able to see how exciting that is for us to be able to offer that. Just to echo a little bit of what Elaine was saying about when this all came down, it absolutely, you know, we go, all of us go from this season of, you know, sort of March through October where we don't do much else other than work. We see one another. Hey, how you doing? Maybe we'll catch up for a quick aperitivo. But you really have this huge part of the year that is essentially off limits to a whole lot of socializing because of this. It was and it continues to be very destabilizing, I think, for our lives. This having to redefine a little bit how we define ourselves, how we think about ourselves. So for me personally, the online experiences have really allowed me to kind of, use that part of my brain again, start to get creative, start thinking. It just feels nice to have a project and have something take shape. So it's quite good, I think, to counterbalance the really destructive part of all of this.
I'm finding, from my perspective, it's the collaboration that's coming out. You know, that we're all in this together in some sort of way, and it's bringing us together and allowing us to exchange ideas. I'm wondering at the moment what sort of collaboration you're seeing from the museums, the authorities, maybe hotels. Is there at the moment this sign of maybe a round table or some sort of discussion that might emerge now or in the future? I don't know who would like to take that question on.
Wow. I'll just say one thing. I know that there's a lot of collaboration among guides and teachers. I mean, we get together, we have conversations, we share these ideas, best practices, and I guess I'm happy about all this online, virtual, but nothing is going to take the place of being in the museums and on the streets. And we have to try to find a blended approach to this. It'd be my greatest hope that the Nardella would get us all together, maybe get around, maybe you could organize that, Helen. So we could be sitting down with representatives of the restaurateurs, of the hotels, of the government, and the guides. I actually think we need to have a conversation, and I'm hoping that this government is going to try to change things. Let the restaurants have their tables outside. Give them a tax break to let them do this. Help the artisans with, someone wrote in, Helen Bailey wrote this in just, I guess, today on Facebook, and she was so right. Let's try to support these kinds of things in the city to transform and work together so that we end up with our beautiful city, manageable and back again, not Disneyland. So I don't think we're collaborating yet. I think the guides are, but I don't think all the other pieces are coming together.
Well, let's hope that we can organise that and get these minds together to work towards the renaissance that Mayor Nardella has spoken about. I mean, this is really the opportunity. We have this curious downtime in our tourism, and maybe this really is an incredible opportunity. Laura, this is an interesting question, as written in, saying if Florence tourism includes more limited visits to top museums, well, how do we avoid making that into a more expensive or exclusive experience? It's an interesting one. Paola, maybe would you like to talk about that, perhaps? I don't know.
Wow, good question. It's hard to predict the future. It's hard to predict, I guess. Do we think of more specialized tourists coming in? Is it going to be limited to just the special groups of privileged few? I don't think so. I think things will go back to normal, probably next year already. I think we're going to have the same queues in front of the Uffizi. I don't think people will be stopped at their homes for too long. So at least that's my own opinion. I think one, wonderful opportunity this pause gave us is to dream, to dream about what we want to do, how much Italy do we want to have in our lives. And I think the response online of the people coming in has been so overwhelming because, there's this need to be in touch with this culture. So I'm not sure. It's a good question, but I think museum directors will have to take this into consideration and make sure it doesn't become something that is only elite, only privileged few, because that wouldn't be a good effect of this moment.
We have a practical question from Elizabeth who says she visits Florence for 3 or 4 months each year, and this year she's hoping to return in September. Do we think that will be possible?
We get that question all the time. I really believe so. I believe many people are booking their tickets. I had a friend from London who told me that she was booking a flight to Florence in October, and that there were only 3 tickets left on that specific date. So I don't think we'll be able to stop people coming back.
I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? That's what we're all seeing is the incredible love towards Italy and towards Florence in particular. I mean, like I was saying, I was out this morning in Florence and I fell in love all over again. And I've lived here for nearly 18 years, and I'm sure you're the same. Maybe we could talk about that. What this moment is meaning to us as individuals. Paola, I know you're not physically in Florence right now. Alex, maybe what are you feeling towards the city at the moment?
What am I feeling? I'm feeling a mix of it changes all the time. Everything, quarantine feelings change, lockdown feelings change. Really quickly though, on the last point, I thought that was such a great question about tourists and whether or not the timeline question, because who knows, but I also think, and I'll be a little provocative here. I think that people also have a responsibility when they travel. And I hope that will come out of this moment, is that there is so much out there. There is so much information. There are now, my goodness, now you have entire lectures and entire courses that are online. I do think that we have to think about sustainable tourism. If I think about next year, it turning back into the lines outside the Uffizi and the paddle toting, I'm sorry, I'm not going to accept that. And that's something that I think we are members of this society and this community, and we owe it to this moment in time and to this city that it's our home. And so I hope that it doesn't go back. I'm not being Pollyanna about it. And I know people have a great love, but that love needs to be coupled with a responsibility towards informing yourself, understanding what that means when you go to visit a city. We have to start thinking about what this actually means for the city. If you love a place, what does mass tourism mean for it? Looking truly at the effects of this. I think we see it now. What we came out yesterday in a talk with Nardella and with some other city leaders is that the hotel tax keeps the cultural associations like the VSA, the library and the cultural center fully funded. There is nothing else that is funding cultural centers like that. So our reliance on that kind of money and that incoming has got to be tempered with the situation that we now find ourselves in. So if you ask me how I feel today, I feel pretty sad when I go into the center of Florence. I'll tell you the truth, because it feels like there's no soul in the city of in the center of Florence, because the residents that over the last 30, 40 years have really been driven out because of a lot of these policies that favor short-term rentals, students, all of this. And quite frankly, that to me, it should be the number one thing that we're talking about with Nardella and company is how do we get Florence to really belong to the residents? And then you can start because at that point, they're going to be stakeholders and they're going to care about the fact that you can't walk around the Uffizi for half of the year because of the scalpers, because of the lines, because of the pickpockets, because of all this. That's the only way we get people, I think, to care is if they're there, they're living there, they're working with and living in and connecting with the city center in a whole different way. So to me, when I go into the city center, yes, I'm so thrilled. My eyes are just drinking everything in, and these are my streets, and we can all do this with our eyes closed, and we love them. It's got to be tempered with a push to bring people back and to create something that lasts much longer than 1 day, 4 hours, whatever the buses are coming in. It's got to change. It's got to stop. And I think that is where we are. So I feel hopeful. Absolutely. We're having this conversation. Last year at this time, we weren't having this conversation. We were complaining, but we weren't having this conversation. So hopeful. And ready for change. Let's go.
I mean, it's true. I mean, you walk into the city center right now and really it is empty. You go out into certain neighborhoods, there's the San Nicolò, for example, where there are still residents, not a huge number, but there are still, and there is a real sort of like sense of community and looking after the area and the outlying areas. But just to give an idea of people who aren't here in Florence right now, it is incredibly empty. People are back on the streets, but really there's no there. So, I mean, what Alexandra's saying is absolutely true. Elaine, would you like to elaborate further on this idea?
Yeah, I mean, there's really pluses and minuses to this whole thing. Walking through the center, I have to say it's a little bit depressing with everything, so many things closed, and everybody looks a little shell-shocked to me. And I think that's because the museums and churches are still closed. That'll change soon when things start to open up again. But I mean, that's the bad side. The good side, though, I feel like that the veil is off now, and the people who live in their neighborhoods are coming out. In San Nicolò, the Old Trarno. I live in the Cure, and it feels really good here. Yeah. The place, maybe some parts of Santa Croce as well. So we're seeing little moments of the future if we're really able to bring the city back. I mean, I don't know if that's going to happen. And I kind of do think that there's going to be a bit of an elitist tourism coming in. The only way I could possibly think about how to avoid that is by extending museum hours, making so that more people can go in. In some ways, it'll bring more jobs to guides, because if we're restricted to 10 people at a time, that means that, you know, there'll be more guides needed to go through. People have to be efficient and, you know, play well together, and maybe extend those hours. And maybe the museum directors have to do a tiered kind of entrance for, you know, students or retirees, residents. You know, it's going to take a big concerted effort, but if we all work together, we might be able to pull it off.
I mean, there, then you're getting into territory of, you know, ways forward and practicalities. This is something that you wanted to talk about specifically, is, you know, the practicalities when tourism does return, how you guys are going to have to work. I mean, the changes that this will bring.
No, in fact, I've been thinking about this all week, and then I'll give it to my colleagues. But I wrote down a couple of things that I thought were going to be important for the guides, but also for people who are taking tours. Right now, I'm sure we're just going to be having for our purposes, the English-speaking population. Of course, there's a whole different element out there with the Italian tour guides. But how we go forward on the streets, we have to be under 10 people. And I haven't seen, Laura Baroncelli wrote something. Hi, Laura, from Star Hotels. She wrote a question mentioning that something had been discussed yesterday. Yes, but I haven't read it. Yeah, I'll get back to that. Maybe we could look that up. But what I've heard is only from Lombardia. So I'm kind of going on that we have to be in small groups of 10 and other. Each group, I think, is going to end up with a whisperer, of course, from a trustworthy source. And the people who are supplying the whisperers have got to guarantee that each one is sanitized. The earbuds have to be thrown away and disposed of after each use. I think that in the future, when technology catches up, maybe the whisperer also takes the temperature of the people in the group. Maybe when things really get going, people come with some kind of a certificate saying that they've been tested. That would be fantastic. And we, as the guides, and speaking loudly is one of the ways of spreading the virus. So I'm sure people are afraid of this. But as a guide, we can't, I just can't imagine speaking from behind a mask. So I picked this up. Can I show my show and tell? This is so funny. I got this from a woman at the bar down the street from me, the pizzeria bar. She had this on, and I ran to get one. And this is a shield, of course. And I thought I could try to make it a little fashionable here with a fascia. And you can lift it up, and you can bring it down, and it fits very comfortably on your head. But I thought that maybe guides, at least you can see, you know, my face, and if I'm smiling or frowning or say what have you, it could be something that we can use while we're waiting for a vaccination. So practical ideas.
No, I mean, this is the way forward. I mean, we're seeing people. I went to Rivrade and had an espresso earlier, and you know, you've got this whole plexiglass thing that's popping up left, right, and center, and certain bariste who are wearing these shields. So I know the world is looking to Italy. It might seem a little bit spacey, but you know, this plastic future is where we're at the moment. Yes, I'm sure we will refine it, but right now it's Italian design. It possibly is worse. Anyway, we have lots more questions about the idea of how, you know, restaurants do count on tourism. Residents alone can't support them. I mean, how can we deal with that? It's true. You know, this city, unfortunately, so many restaurants, so many wine bars. You know, that's going to be a struggle. Of course it is. Paola, I don't know if you'd like to talk about how you view the future of guiding.
You know, I'm on the same I'm at the seaside in Tuscany, and the only thing I can tell you right now, what's happening here is the entire town is getting ready to welcome tourists. So the restaurants are opening their gardens, and the flowers are everywhere. So it's like, the world is waking up after a very long time of closure. And in these last weeks, I couldn't help but go back to Boccaccio and his lines. And anytime I was reading Boccaccio in the past, it just seemed something so distant. And now all of a sudden, his words hit right into the heart. I have a feeling the way we were able to go into lockdown and in a week change our lives completely. I mean, if you think about Arizona State University, my school, transferred 70,000 students to online teaching in a matter of 5 days.
Amazing.
I believe how we organized our lives to be in a lockdown so quickly, in the same way we will bounce back to meet the future, to meet the clients, to open our doors. So if the Ponte Vecchio is closed today and all the doors are shut, I'm sure they will be, in no time, they will be open and, ready to welcome everyone. And I think the world is waiting to come back to us. So I remain very optimistic about this whole thing. And I really believe we will bounce back quite quickly as well. And this will be kind of like a forgotten, cherished time in our lives. Because I believe it gave us a chance to really also kind of think of what is dear to us and what we care about. And how much time do we want to spend online looking at online content, and just how much creativity.
We've lost Paola there. I see, Elaine, you were wanting to contribute something.
I did. I just wanted to say one quick, sorry, Paola, you froze. I just wanted to say one thing about bars and restaurants. That was a really good question. There's going to be a terrible fallout, of course, to this. And I'm sorry for those bars and restaurants. The ones I'm not sorry about are the bazillion sandwich shops we have in Florence, which are ridiculous, and the little automated places to go buy spaghetti, heated up. But I think there's an opportunity for these good restaurants and bars to get out into the piazzas, and hopefully Nardella will give them the permission to get rid of those horrible gray tombs that we're supposed to be eating al fresco, and open things up, because we all need the air. We need to spread out, give the permission for, I don't know, Ristorante Accademia to go into Piazza San Marco and get those tables on. And that's going to be very enticing for people, I think, to be able to sit outside, have a drink, move around, stay socially distanced. And luckily, Florence is warm enough most of the year that we'll be able to dine al fresco. Wouldn't that be fantastic?
Lisa mentions here, what do you guys think will happen to the housing and apartment market?
Yeah.
Alex, do you want to?
Yeah, I mean, and also to answer this question about, I too, I mean, I have many friends who are restaurant owners, who are bar owners, and this has been devastating for them. And I don't anticipate or want a Florence without tourists, but I do want it to be responsible tourism, and that, to me, depends on the city, its residents, and the travelers / tourists, however you want to term them, themselves. And so we all have a responsibility here when it comes to this city that it's so globally adored and loved. The question about that, and about how bars and restaurants and all of these sort of activities will come back. I think everything just remains to be seen. I don't know that we have a kind of crystal ball and can figure that out. I think it's going to be very slow going for a long time, quite frankly. And let's see. But we all have that responsibility. I'm with Elaine. I think those horrible gray tombs need to go. That's all I know.
Of course, we got the pandemic first after China, really. I mean, that's in Europe. So I'm wondering whether you think that Italy can show the way here. I feel like Italy has a responsibility in terms of setting an example. The world has sort of like looked and seen what's going on. I know my friends in the UK have been very much, what should we do? When we were 2 weeks ahead of them, how should we act? How should we behave? And now I get the feeling it's like, well, what do we do next? And they're watching us. I mean, do you three feel this sort of responsibility? What's the reaction you're getting from your clients and your friends overseas, and how do you feel you can help them?
That's a good question.
Elaine, Alex.
Yeah, really quickly. Yes, no, the housing question I didn't answer. So Elaine, maybe you want to take that.
No, that was
from the. No, go, please.
Oh, on housing. Okay, I was going to just say a quick thing on housing. I thought that was a good question that Helen had. And then we can move to the next one. The housing thing, I think right now the prices are pretty much stayed, but I have a feeling that people there will naturally be a lessening of Airbnbs. And again, it's all really based on what the government's going to do about this, but that means that there's going to be all this housing, hopefully, that could be used by students and Italian students. And maybe it's hard for anyone to even rent a place in the center of Florence because there's no opportunities. So the way to repopulate the city with Italians is to fill it with students, with young couples who don't own their own place. And I think that, again, it's all about the government, the city government being behind this, maybe helping them out with tax breaks or what have you. But that housing issue means we're going to have a lot of empty spaces that could be filled with Italians. Sorry, Alex.
No, I'm glad, because I knew that I wasn't answering the question that was asked, but I couldn't remember what it was. So there you go. Absolutely, 1,000%. I think that's up to the city, that they say put a moratorium on the number of Airbnbs, on the number of these short-term rentals. Basta. We've got to get people back into the city so they start to care about it. It's the only way for us to counter what the situation that we got ourselves into in the beginning, which just exactly like Paola said, for ASU to go online and be able to transition, what we saw instead was a total crumbling of every single thing here in Florence, because we are 100% wholly based, with the exception of a couple of other sectors, on tourism. So let's be smart about it. Let's get people involved, get people back into Florence, caring about the city center, caring about the monuments themselves from an environmental perspective, all of that. I mean, it's the responsibility of so many different actors, and we've all got to take that responsibility.
I mean, that was one of the things that the statement that came up earlier from Laura, I can't find it now, but it was the fact that Florence Convention Bureau, who is an operator, who they organize various big events and conferences and congresses in the city, and they're behind the Destination Florence portal as well, that you can get all your different experiences there. So Carlotta Ferrari is the president of the Florence Convention Bureau, and she's been talking about how she's launching this open discussion about how we get more manageable tourism in Florence. So there is that strategy that is emerging, which brings us hope that we'll be able to contribute towards that in the future. Yeah. So I mean, we can all get involved there and see where we can help with talking with Carlotta.
Yeah. And that's a real opportunity for us to use, as you said earlier, leading the way. If we can lead the way into how to change things, I think the whole world is looking at Italy with great admiration. I think that Conte everyone's got a bro crush on Conte, that's for sure. I know I do, because he has been ready, steady, and been guiding, whether you liked him or not, as the prime minister. I think he's really shown a great deal of courage and calm during this whole storm. And it's made me very proud, I have to say, people from the United States writing me, asking me, how are you? And me being able to say, I feel safe, I feel like there's a plan going through. Now, if that could be coming down to the provinces, to the regione, to the cities, man, we've got a really wonderful opportunity.
No, absolutely. I mean, Conte, you know, I think time will tell. That's the thing, isn't it? But he has been given this sort of real clarity and a real sense of leadership that I think a lot of the world has admired, that he stood up, and there's a real sort of sense of empathy with the Italian people as well. So yes, I would agree with you there, Elaine, that, you know, people are looking to the world, looking to Italy for an example, so you can see where that goes. Maybe we could start to, I don't know whether you've got any other points that you would like to raise before we closing the session down.
I think, Helen, what you were asking about what we can do now for people who are, you know, abroad and watching. I think we have been doing that, slowly creating online activities, you know, to offer bits of our knowledge and what our passions are. And it is really amazing to see people tuning in from around the world, you know, in their living rooms. And if we didn't have this pandemic, we would have never thought, you know, of this way to reach such broad audiences. We were always waiting for people to come to us, and now we can actually go to them. So, you know, what an amazing opportunity and privilege, actually, too.
Paola, maybe tell us maybe all three of you could tell us what your next sessions are online, so that our readers can join you and learn something new about Florence or Italy. Paola, what have you got planned coming up?
So I just started a 10-week art history course. It's of course Renaissance, and we will start with Giotto and go all the way to Michelangelo. So the course is going to be on Wednesdays. And we just had a first session. So we are going to be diving into early Renaissance next week. And then on June 6th, I will be having a conversation with Ross King about his books, about his research on the Renaissance. So it's really exciting. And then more ideas, of course, are coming in also from people who are attending the online events, because they ask questions and they make suggestions as well. So I feel very privileged and very fortunate to be able to share my passion in such a difficult time in the world and speak about things I love. And then there are people who want that, and it makes a difference in their lives, even just for an hour in a week.
That sounds wonderful. I'd love to tune in there and hear Ross King as well speak about the Duomo. You know, hopefully Florence Cathedral has opened, but Brunelleschi's Cupola, it still hasn't. It's under maintenance, so that's hopefully from June it will be reopening. Elaine, what have you got coming up?
Well, I've organized my online, they're called virtual art history encounters, and the first three were biographies of artists, Caravaggio, Michelangelo, and Leonardo. Then the next three have been about cities. I started with Venice, Florence, and on Sunday I'll be presenting Rome, a big broad brush from Julius Caesar to Julius II, Rome through the ages. And then my next trilogy is going to be on social issues. I'm going to do art in the Black Death. So I thought that was appropriate.
Absolutely, very apt. I mean, we might as well try and be inspired by the past. Florence has been through this before, so
yes,
you know,
yes.
and it's still standing. Alex, what have you got coming up?
So I started a series a project really that I hope will continue even beyond this. It's called Forma Sideris, and I'm really most interested in using this moment as an opportunity for me to branch out a little bit and study and bring to more global audience things like literature. So I have a talk tomorrow night, a conversation about some works by women in the Laurentian Library, for example. These are things, again, that are definitely not on most visitors' itineraries. And then next week, talking Dante, but not Inferno, Purgatory, so one of the lesser known books of the Divine Comedy. And then St. Clair, talking about her poetry and her writings, St. Francis's best friend, for those of you who don't know her. So for me too, this has just been such an incredible community that I've been just privileged to try and get together over the last couple of weeks. Providing, I think, absolutely this moment for people to connect with Italian culture. We talked about Napoli last week, so certainly things that aren't the usual. I really have enjoyed going back to some of these things that are my personal passions. And then next week, I don't know, Helen, if you were going to talk about it, I'm going to be doing a visit with the Florentine at the Boboli Gardens to be able to go and visit one of the real gems, which is the Upper Botanical Garden. It's only open for a very short time every year. So we're going to mask up and get our headsets on, and we're going to go and enjoy Florence together next week and get back to it.
I mean, this is us. Maybe it's too soon. Maybe it's not. I mean, like I said, I was in the Boboli Gardens this morning, and I was inspired. And thank you, Alex, for sort of like putting this together very last minute. But we're slowly but surely we will get back out there in some sort of way, and this knowledge will continue. Thanks to all three of you, and thanks to everybody out there who is conversing and doing these wonderful online cultural sessions. They're really making a difference and keeping people company, and that's what we need right now. But yes, please do join us on Tuesday as well when Alex is getting out there and enjoying Boboli. And please do tune in to Elaine, Paola, and Alex's online sessions. And we will be back on Tuesday evening for we're talking about finance. So we'll be talking with a financial consultant who's going to try and explain to us the massive new financial law that just came into play in Italy, which involves incredible, it's an incredible piece of legislation, and Tommaso Franchilanci will be talking us through your financial concerns and what this legislation means. So please do join in on Tuesday at 5 p.m. for that. Thank you all, ladies, for joining us. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you all, and we'll speak soon. I hope to see you all soon as well. Goodbye. Have a nice weekend. Bye.